call this February 9th, 2026 Board of Education work session to order. George, can you take the roll?
Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Ms. Hafner?
Here.
Mr. Micko?
Here.
Mr. Wall?
Here.
Mrs. Hausum?
Here.
All present.
We can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have our strategic priorities. Our district has developed and is currently engaged in a 3-year strategic plan which reflects the values, beliefs, and hopes of our students, staff, parents, and community. There are 4 strategic priorities to the plan: transforming teaching and learning, aligning staff and resources, cultivating culture and climate, and leveraging funding and facilities. Our strategic priorities give actionable focus to our district's purpose and mission and guide the work of our strategic plan. Next, we have public comment. Being that we have no audience, I'm assuming no public comment. Next, we have approval of minutes. Motion to approve the minutes of the January 22nd, 2026 regular board meeting. All audio recordings will be a permanent part of the minutes and are available upon request through the treasurer's office. Video recordings shall be maintained based on the availability of the selected digital online platform. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Ms. Hausum. Under my report, there's one item for your consideration, and it is an action item. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the following revision be made to the January 22nd, 2026 agenda under H, Superintendent's Report, for the donation agreement between Serpentini Chevrolet for Strongsville Middle School. Section 1 of the agreement has been revised. There were dates of payment for the donation that have been corrected.
Do I have a motion? So moved. Second?
Second.
Motion by Megan, second by Eric. Any questions for Dr. Ryba? Hearing none, George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Hafner?
Yes.
Mr. Wall?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mr. Micko?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Moving on to business services, another action item. Be it resolved upon my recommendation that the Board of Education amends the GPD group proposal approved at the October 23rd, 2025 regular Board of Education meeting for architectural and engineering services related to the baseball softball field renovation project. The amendment includes the addition of tasks 2 through 5 as listed in the exhibit at a cost of $95,000, bringing the total contract amount to $199,855. Funding will be provided from the Capital Projects Fund. GPD Group is an approved vendor through the Ohio Schools Council for professional design and engineering services to political subdivisions.
Do I have a motion? So moved. Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Hafner, second by Mr. Wall. Any questions or comments? Dr. Ryba?
So the board has previously approved Task 1. Task 1 focused on, and the work has been going on, of actually designing what this could look like, how it could fit in the space, and that it's coming to completion here. The other tasks go from permitting to supporting with the bidding to construction administration and project closeout. So this takes everything to complete the project from top to bottom, but this is not about approving who is actually going to go do the work or to pay for the work associated with this. This is the GPD services to make the project happen, now to complete closeout of the project.
Questions, comments?
So I'll start. I have a lot of heartburn. I've expressed heartburn before that the work that we did before we were able to do and put on a shelf and then bring it forward whenever we need it. Whereas this is moving forward and we still have a large bond project that we don't know how it's going to play out. And so I'm reticent to move forward on a $3 million project when we have the larger issues with the bond project, and those haven't been determined. And the way I describe it is this is important, but if you think of it as your house, the bond project represents the roof and the furnace and the heater that are, and this represents something that's nice to have, but not essential. And so I'm having heartburn saying, let's move forward on this while we still haven't determined the bond.
Other questions, comments?
Dr. Ryba, how, the study and the work that's being done here, what's the shelf life of that work? If we pause development?
I would have to ask specifically, but the work that's being done for the design has a longer lifespan, right? So the engineering that's being done looks at what drainage is what retention areas would we need, how would the layout be, bringing the fence in from the softball, extending the fencing in the outfield to have a full football field out there. So the work that's been done over the last handful of months may need to be updated slightly, but it would have, off of my knowledge, it would have a shelf life. Specifically, I can ask later to get details as to what that would be. But if we put this on, if we put this project on the shelf for a little bit, you would miss the mark of what the board previously shared as open and ready for business spring of '27. So that would be the delay you would, because the baseball season is a finite period of time, you would lose that window. We, to keep, based on our last conversations, and Michelle and Laura, you've been a part of those, to keep on pace with being ready for spring '27, we need to move this forward now. If we pause, then you'd probably be looking at missing that season.
I have 2 questions. I'm looking at the document attached here, and I just want, for clarity's sake, it has task 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8. Is that just a typo?
Yeah, it should be 5. Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to make sure we're referring to the same things.
Yeah.
Also, there was a lot of discussion early on in this project about fundraising efforts, and I think we gave the go-ahead to kind of, has there been any progress in that department?
Yeah, so what we've talked about is we are wrapping up the fundraising for the football fields. So I asked Jason to wrap those up with the people that he's getting donations from and then move on. So we haven't secured any specific donations yet for the baseball field.
It's still in the works.
Oh, yeah, there'll be just like we did for the turf field, there'll be naming rights and signage and all of the things that we've done for the football fields. Obviously, we only have an athletic director right now, not an assistant athletic director, so that has caused some recent challenges with the bandwidth. But again, reaching out to the contacts that were past donors for the football fields. And then, like I said, once we can get that in a better spot, then move on to baseball.
Other questions or comments?
As far as the exclusions, do we anticipate wanting to do site lighting, landscape design, plumbing design for dugouts, et cetera?
I'd have to ask Jason. He's been a part of taking the lead with those conversations.
Okay.
Anything else? Good. Okay, George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Hafner?
Yes.
Mr. Wall?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
And Mr. Micko?
No.
Motion carries.
Next up under curriculum, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron to get us going on a follow-up from our earlier state report card discussion.
Okay, well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. As Dr. Ryba said, I want to give you some updates as to where we are with the goals that the board had set. Yeah. So when we shared back in October the district report card, the board presented to us 2 goals that they'd like us to work on. Those are depicted here, and that is to achieve a 5-star rating in our early literacy, and then also looking at the individual elementary buildings to have them be at 3 stars for each of the individual measures. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time tonight going through the 2 buildings that we're targeting, and then the bulk of the time I'm going to spend on the early literacy measure, as that affects all 5 buildings in the district. The first one looking at Sarar. 3 years ago, in the progress area, Sarar had 1 star. 2 years ago, 2 stars, and then last year, which was the 24-25 school year, 2 stars as well. So in spending time looking at the data, really digging into value added and where we are with growing kids, subgroups of kids, what it amounted to is a targeted approach as to what we want to focus on. So I highlighted a couple key areas here. They're relatively broad in nature. We do have some more targeted plans that I'm working on behind the scenes, but essentially it's better instruction, and I say that with regard to how do we meet the needs of kids that are in front of us. So science, making it more interactive, deeper learning, real world. Math, our problem-solving approaches. We're working through building thinking classrooms, and that's an approach where kids are actively engaged with the math. And language arts, continuing with our curriculum adoption, the CKLA, and using our literacy coaches and our building leaders to ensure that we're implementing that to the degree that we need it to be implemented in this first year of our rollout. So that's, again, very quick overview of Sarar. Next, I'm going to go into Chapman. And Chapman's a little bit different in that it hasn't had that historical 1-star, 2-star rating. So last year was the first the first year that it received 2 stars. Prior to that, it was 3-star, 3-star. So something happened last year to give us this negative rating. And you can see that it was a minus 4.87 composite. Now that is an overall, the last 3 years combined, composite score for the building. We want to make sure that we're addressing that and doing what we can to, again, dive into the data, see where we fell short, and look at ways in which we can be on a plan to move forward. So on the right-hand side, talking more about Tier 1 instruction, this is what we focus on day in and day out. It's been our focus for the last few years. But again, really digging into that data. So where specifically do we need to make sure that we're reaching subgroups of kids? Where do we need to look at what we're doing in the classroom? Is it at the rigor of the standards? Are we following standards? What do our assessments look like? And are we using that type of data? So again, as a high-level overview, really focusing with the teachers, using our resources to ensure that our Tier 1 instruction is solid. We're doing all of the things that we've been putting into place for the last few years. For this measure, because this negative 4.87 is a pretty strong negative number, it's going to take probably more than 1 year to get out of this hole that we've dug. Because each year they use current year and then the past 2 years when they configure this overall composite score. So with our thinking here and mathematically, if we can go from a minus 4.87 this year to next year when we get that state report card, have it at a -1 overall, that'll still keep us at a 2-star rating holistically, but then the following year, we will have the 3-star. So I think that's a realistic goal. I think jumping to 3 stars next year might be pretty too ambitious almost because of this heavy weight that this year's score is going to play into it. I do expect improvement. We are working toward that. If we, obviously get better than a -1, that'll be great. But I do want to put this on a 2-year plan in order for us to get to those 3 stars in the building.
Erin, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Can you just remind me, I think you might have shared it before, but negative 4.87 on what kind of scale?
So a -2 to 2 is what they consider at expected growth for the state level. So anything below that is below expected growth, and then obviously above.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions about the 2 buildings or our approach before we get into the early literacy piece?
What were they again prior to what was Chapman's rating the year prior?
They've been 3s. ever since the initiation of the STAR reports.
Do you have the overall composite score
For the last couple years,
for the year before?
I
What-
have it, just not handy.
What I'm wondering is it reasonable to expect to go from a minus 487 to a minus 1 in 1 year?
I think so, because it's 50% current year, 25% the year prior, and 25% the year prior. So we have a good year, 2 years prior, and if we have a good year, mathematically it works.
It'll balance out.
It
Okay.
does.
For a number to be that negative, and if we have 50% holding us up, this was not a great year for us.
Correct.
So because this will continue to pull down our ratings for the next 2 years, what indicators as a board and a community can we be looking at, say, next year, that gives us some sort of comfort knowing that this number is probably not going to give us what we're looking for? What other signals can we point to and say, hey, we're making progress?
Yeah, that's a great
1.7
question.
is that seems like I'm with Rich, I'm not sure if that's like super optimistic or not. I don't have a sense for that. But if there are other things that we could look at and you could share?
Sure. So each building receives a state report card in the fall. So next fall, we'll get a report card for, how did Chapman do in a number of areas beyond just this target? So how did they do overall? How did they do with their early literacy, with their achievement, those type of things? So we can look at those measures. Throughout the year, we have other data points that I'm going to talk about. How are we doing with, our Ames Web assessment? It's not necessarily going to show the growth because it's a challenging measure to measure internally because it's configured by the state. It's very formulaic in how they come up with that number. I think there are ways, especially in the fall, to say, here's how we did, even if this number, isn't significantly higher. I think it'll give us, how many stars did we get in each of those categories as well as overall.
Is Ames Web another metric that we pay for that's kind of separate?
Yeah, so I'll get into that a little bit. It's more of a diagnostic that our kids take 3 times a year, basically in reading and math. And it's where are we with basic skills, essentially. And then if we're not on track, how do we work with our kids through interventions to make progress and gains? So let me go through the next part, and then if follow-up questions, I'll be sure to answer them. I do have in front of you, this is a bigger picture here of what I'm going to talk through on our pathway to early literacy. It just gives the overall, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail here. This comprehensively will show you what I'm talking through if you want to follow that as well. This up here is just another graphic depicting where we're starting and where we want to get to. So this is another rating in which a 1-year turnaround is going to be challenging. We were at a 78.4%, which I'll show on the next slide where we got that number from. In order to get to 5 stars, we need to be at an 88%. So that's a substantial jump, 10 points there, 10 percentage points. So our goal is by next year on the report card for early literacy to be at least at an 83%. So we just took 2 years and, the difference, put that into next year by 25-26, which is reflective of this school year. And then the following year to have that 5-star. And again, I looked at how many districts in the state got 5 stars, and it's 33 out of 607. So it's not something we're just missing. It's lofty, but I do feel that we can and should get there. So I want to go through, this gets a little bit heavy in kind of the terminology, so I'm trying to make it as clear as possible by using some color coding. If we look at K-3 improvement, so that's the overall measure. That's what tells us how are we doing with our K-3 students. Are they growing each year? Within that measure, there are 3 metrics, and those are the 3 different colored bars there. They are each weighted differently, which adds another layer to this, but these are our scores. So the state looks at promotion to fourth grade. How many students did we promote to fourth grade? What was our third grade proficiency? So how many of our kids reached a 700 or proficient on the test? And then the reddish color one is K to 3 improvement. And that's the one that we are going to spend a decent amount of time talking about, because as you can see, that was the lowest area across the district. Increasing this one is going to increase the weight, or not increase the weight, but increase the max points there, and then our district rate. So overall, again, we had a 78.4% when you take those at their weight and configure them. These colors will continue to correlate on the next few slides. So again, the reddish one is the one we want to really make sure that we're focused on. The yellow one is kind of cautionary, it's a heavy weight, so we'll look at that one as well. All right, so again, the early literacy measure, that shows K to 3, how are we doing improving students? Very similar information on this slide, but looking at what is going to really close that gap in the early literacy measure. So when we look at the biggest area of need was kindergarten students going to first grade. And essentially what they do is they say, okay, in the fall, which students are on what's called a RIMP, a Reading Improvement and Monitoring Plan. That means essentially they need some interventions so that they can be on track. They look then, I say they, the state, in the fall of kindergarten, these students that were placed on a RIMP, how did they do in the fall of first grade? Are they still on a RIMP, or have they gotten off that RIMP? And that's an area in which we need to improve that measure. And then in the third grade, we also need to ensure that we're hitting that 700 proficiency. So this further breaks down what I just talked about, the kindergarten to first grade off track. Although it's small up there, that first bar shows the percentage of students that were off track that moved to on track. And the circled one is kindergarten to first. So that's a low number. We need to get our kindergarten students on track in first grade. Now this, I will say, looks deceiving, and I feel that we've already somewhat course corrected by the nature of the diagnostic. What I mean by that is we do AIMSweb, and that is a reading diagnostic at the start of kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth grade. In kindergarten, when they moved to first grade, prior to this year, our AIMSweb only did one measure. It took one measure and said, this is a kid's score. They have since updated that. So I'm talking AIMSweb holistically, nationally, said that's probably not the best indicator to use just one score. So we're going to use more of a comprehensive approach like we do in every other grade level. They also re-normed, so they nationally looked at how all the students were doing in kindergarten, first grade, et cetera, and changed kind of where the expectation is. So just through those two mechanisms, we're already in a better place because this is already somewhat configured. Last year's kindergartens that were on a RIMP, how'd they do in first grade? Now, to me, that doesn't mean, we just relax and say, okay, the test solved it for us. We want to continue to maintain that focus, ensure that we are doing absolutely everything that needs done for our students. But I do feel good about, knowing that some of this was based on our diagnostic we used. Across the state, districts can use a multitude of diagnostics. So this is one in which, we've used for probably 15 years, and it's really good, except that was kind of the key area where we struggled.
Erin, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Do we put RIMPs on kids like right away in the fall of kindergarten?
We do.
Okay.
So 2 ways in which kids can be on RIMPs. First of all, the AIMSweb, and then secondly, what's called the kindergarten readiness assessment. So when they come into kindergarten, we give them a state assessment, what do they know, early literacy, math, and then kind of some social skills and how do they, interact with students. If they don't get the language and literacy score that's designated by the state, we put them on a RIP for that too.
Okay. I have one more question.
Yeah.
Have you dug into the data at all about whether there's a correlation between the success of half-day kindergartners versus full-day kindergartners?
I have. So I'm going to share on this slide, at least where we start with half and full day. And then,
Oh, there it is. I must have missed that
yeah,
the first
that's
time.
okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is the next slide here. This is now this current school year. So when we received our students in the fall, and again, I want to emphasize that this is how the kids came to us. So this doesn't reflect much of our kindergarten teaching. It's essentially what we just said, the RIMPs are from AimsWeb and/or the KRA. In this case, we're solely looking at AimsWeb. So when they came to us, 41% of them were off track. So out of 315 students, off track means they were in the red or the yellow on AimsWeb, or Tier 2 and Tier 3 is how we measure this. On the bottom is what you just asked about, Michelle, is, again, how we receive them. 11% of our full-day students ended up on RIMPs, whereas 31% of our half-day students did. I would say, there's a correlation between socioeconomic status and academic early literacy readiness. It doesn't, significantly indicate that that's what this is, but there is probably some merit to that based on, full day being a paid tuition-based. You can see the buildings there on the right. Again, this is off-track percentage in the fall. So they're relatively around the average. The average was 41%. And then what we're aiming for is the green line, if we can get them to 20% or fewer that are off track.
Have we tracked those full day, those half day over, like, up to third grade?
We have tracked them in the past for multiple years. Data does show that by the end of first grade, they tend to catch up.
Okay.
It's just, half day, you have 2.5 hours of students, and they don't have the same, amount of time that a full day student has. Once they get into first grade, though, it kind of levels out with regards to gaps. As far as how we want to continue to gauge this, this is another area in which it's challenging because we don't know until the fall, essentially. Like, how did our kids do? We want our first grade students to be on track when they come back. So these current kindergarten students, we're going to measure them. We're going to keep track of them. We're going to see how many of them are off track. And our goal is to make that percentage smaller. As they came in, like I said, 41% were off track. The thinking is if we can get it to fewer than 20% off track, ideally they will come in the first grade and take the assessment and we'll have, fewer than 20% off track. It's not a perfect correlation by any means because the norms on AimsWeb, they go to a first grade level. So if they're on track at the end of kindergarten, it doesn't mean they're going to come back ready in first grade necessarily and magically be on track. But we needed some sort of indicator, some sort of measurement. And we didn't have anything to use that was, really indicative of how the kids are going to perform in the fall. So the goal here again is fewer than 20% off track in spring, winter, fewer than 30%, and then where we are currently. We do really want to continue to look at students who remain off track. So we are currently doing our winter AimsWeb. We should have that data in the next week or so. We're going to, at that point, look at those students, the kindergarten students who are off track. Now that they've had multiple months of schooling, they've had interventions in place, which students are not making expected growth? And that's where we, really need to continue to target students. That gives us a better indicator of our teaching, more so than how they came to us.
This swing looks pretty significant. Do we have a lot of confidence? Have we seeing children progress that much in 1 year once they've settled in and have that dedicated instruction?
We do.
Okay.
I get a lot of, not to harp on it, but a lot of our kids, they may come in not knowing sounds or letters or early literacy skills in general. By mid-year, they've closed some of those gaps, and then by spring, traditionally, it's a very small percentage that are in the red and yellow.
And I would just add that we have some pretty impressive, and we've worked over the last few years on meetings that we meet with the whole team. So teachers, principals, psychologists, reading specialists that we have in every building, and the analysis that they do in terms of what are we targeting specifically, what specific skill does that student need, who's going to do it, how often is it going to happen, what are we actually doing, and those interventions have gotten so much better. It's just, and I've observed them a lot, and it's just amazing how much detail. No longer is the conversation just, maybe we'll give them extra of this. It's really, really targeted to their needs. So I think that has made a huge difference.
It has, absolutely. And also the RIMPs, each student has a customized reading improvement and monitoring plan. So in the past, they were a little more general, repeated reading or extra, those type of things. They are honed in based on the science of reading. Where are these specific deficits? What interventions will we employ? How are we, exactly what Jenny said, how are we going to measure that? And what are we doing if they are not showing the rate of growth that they should show in AIMSweb?
Aaron, I don't want to assume, but I'm
Yeah.
assuming that we are working with the parents as well as part of that team, and that they're,
Yes.
knowledgeable on the RIMPs and
Yes. So the parents are
work.
developed in conjunction with, the RIMPs are developed in conjunction with parents.
Yeah.
A lot of times, we'll work together at fall conferences and share, here's the specific deficits, here's what we intend to do. If we close that gap, here's the next step. And then we always update them also with progress monitoring.
Do you feel like the current Title I and intervention support that we have meet the needs of our students and support this plan? Or do you feel like there's something that the board needs to consider?
I would say the challenge with the half-day is, again, they have less time because they're only in the building 2.5 hours. Our title teachers and our literacy specialists are incredible. Absolutely cannot speak highly enough of them, and you look at their data and see where these kids have grown. Short of adding additional, because we're seeing such great growth with utilizing, these specific support personnel, I think we're doing everything we can. We're getting really great growth from our students and, classroom teachers as well. I don't want to leave them out. But when they get to what we call like a tier 2 in intervention, oftentimes that's when they'll work with our Title I teachers or our literacy specialists.
And so, Mr. Wall, you may know this, but the board a handful of years back, we used the ESSER funds, and then it made it a permanent part of our district to provide reading specialists at the buildings that don't qualify for Title I. So that was a huge gap for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been, kids at Kinsner and Sarrar get the same level of support and services as Chapman, Whitney, and Muraski. So that's been a game changer for us.
So you feel like you have the right tools then, right resources?
Yes. I do.
And you got the plan?
I think all day, full day kindergarten for everyone would be, obviously we all know that, the next hurdle to tackle. But as far as what we have in place now, yes, I'm very happy with where we are. Moving into then the yellowish color, the third grade proficiency. This one is different in that it doesn't consider growth of students. So it's essentially, can you get to this benchmark, this set point, no matter where you come in? So we took a test in the fall, our third grade students, and state then, shows us how many of our students were on track to hit that 700. Did they hit that 700 mark, which is what they consider proficient? Based on the fall data, and I want to emphasize that this is a third grade test that our incoming third graders are taking in October. So again, they haven't had the third grade curriculum. We do have to put them on RIMS based on how they score on this test so that we ensure they're getting the appropriate interventions. But we had 45% of our third grade students who were off track in the fall. Now, I did look back at previous years. That is a little bit higher than previous years. I think one reason is for the first year, we went to an online assessment for both reading and math. Other districts have been doing online for multiple years. This was our first time doing it. I think we knew that going in. It was going to be a little bit of a challenge. What's great is that the teachers have now taken that upon themselves in third grade to ensure that they're getting the online typing, the practice that they need through peer assessment or through what they're using for state tests or just everyday interactions with class. You know, they may do a quick formative assessment on the computer. So they're getting the actual typing practice because we don't want that to be the hindrance. That also shows us that we need to make sure kindergarten first and second are utilizing the resources we have. So we do have typing agent. We need to continue to stress the importance. You know, we weigh how much kids are on computers versus they need to be ready to type. So I think we have a better indication now of what that test involves because the second part of this third grade test is all, you know, essentially an essay. Call it an essay. It's a response to a prompt. And if students have not done a lot of typing, the results, you know, will be probably sparse. So this is an area that is the 40% weight of this measure. So it's a huge area. You know, I don't love that it's just a set point. Again, it doesn't look at, you know, where kids came in, did they make growth? It's do they hit this 700 mark? So you can see the buildings where they fell, again, in the fall here when they took the third grade test. That's the off-track percentage per building, and the numbers in parentheses are the number of students. So in looking to find like a mid-year, midpoint check-in to make sure that we're on the right track, we had to come up with a measure because we don't take the spring test until the spring. We'll get that data in May, probably late April or May. At that point, it's too late to, you know, really do anything to course correct. So our teachers are working really hard. What we ask them to do then is for this winter goal, right around now, they're giving a full-length practice test online. So it's essentially the state test. They can do it through a platform. The kids, it looks just like a real test. It feels just like a real test. And the really neat thing is teachers can then use that data to change their instruction or to format their instruction to meet the needs of students. So it actually shows each student's responses. It shows their typing, their writing, you know, what did they put, how did they score, because it's all scored automatically. And this is the first year we've done this, and, you know, I've heard a lot of very positive things from the third grade teachers. I was initially apprehensive, and, you know, they may not want to give this assessment because they need to teach, you know, their CKLA. I think Jenny can attest to this from, you know, some things she's heard also, but they really like this data. It's a great check-in as far as, okay, now I know, here's where my students are scoring, here's, you know, the score they got, and then more importantly, what did they miss and why? Or how can I further tailor this instruction to make sure that they're putting, you know, a topic sentence, because that's where they failed, you know, to get those points, et cetera. Did you want to share anything, Jenny? I thought you had a nice anecdote from this morning.
Sure. I was at a building this morning, and the teachers were talking about the assessment that they gave, and immediately they said it was really cool because a lot of our kids already scored 700, so they're already there. But then the ones that did not, they were able to speak specifically to what they were missing. I know exactly what they did on that writing prompt. I know exactly that they wrote one sentence. You know, that's an issue. I've got to work on that. Or their introductions they equated it to they're speaking like second graders. We need to bolster it up to speak more like third graders. They can't just end the paragraph by, okay, thanks for reading, goodbye. It has to be more, you know, an ending sentence. So it's things like that, but it's just really cool to see that they're already talking targeted things. They're talking about small groups. They're going to do this, they're going to do that with these students that need that support. So it's really just refreshing to see the plan that Aaron's put in place, to see it really in action in the building, discussions with the principal, and starting that progress, so.
And ideally, we could also take that data and enrich students. You know, if they're already scoring way above 700, what else can we do? What groups can we enrich with during their IE time? So that's another feature that we can use this data for. But again, we had to create a midpoint check-in, and I think this one it'll be a good indicator. We asked them to have it done by the second week of February. So by this Friday, they should have all the results. I can go in and see holistically how we did. I can see by teacher, by student, and also look at all that data. And same thing that Jenny said, you know, what out of 10 points for the writing, what was our average? You know, was it conventions that they struggled on? Was it elaboration? Which parts of it? And how do we make sure that we're hitting those as we continue the rest of the year?
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Earlier you said the fall state test for third grade would be a way that our kids could get on a ramp.
Correct.
So 45% of our third graders are on a ramp right now. And we have the staff to deal with that?
I mean, we find a way. That was, you know, one area of Kinsner. If you look, they had a lot of students.
Yeah.
That was the first thing they talked about, you know, because as they're on a RIMP, they have to get X number of minutes a week.
Right.
So it's, you know, beyond just core instruction, or how do we integrate into core instruction the targeted needs that are on that RIMP? And it is a challenge. At Kinsner, I know they worked really hard to come up with creative ways to group kids. So they can use their intervention and enrichment time. You know, this teacher will take this group of students, maybe it's not, you know, their class, but I'm going to work with them because here's what I know that they are lacking in skills, or, you know, are still with phonics on this group. So, you know, the teachers are amazing at finding ways to make things work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Aaron,
Yeah.
the 88% for the improvement, is that one of those factors that the state continually ratchets up?
It should not be. Now, do I have that in writing anywhere? No. But it should remain static at that 88%. It has the last few years.
Do we lose sleep over that? Because if they change it to 90%, then, or am I overly analyzing it?
Yeah, it's not one that I don't think, Cameron, plan to raise any higher. I think the data shows that, you know, in the state, we're not there. So raising it higher would just, you know, make us even further, not just you know, Ohio, make us further from hitting that mark. And I think it's already, like I said, an ambitious target for districts because they have to meet all three of those criteria measures.
And then you mentioned that the Ames test was one of the issues that we had, and you made mention that other districts use other tools. Do we need to consider another tool or not?
Well, the state
I
is
mean,
going to...
I know we lose 15 years of
Yeah.
data, but 15 years of data, but we need a better diagnostic tool.
I would say the tool in itself is outstanding. The one challenge we had was the first grade, for all the reasons that I talked about. It was just looking at oral reading fluency. That was the only measure. If kids didn't have that, they got put on a RIMP. I feel confident with Ames Web that it measures what we need it to. However, the state is now changing for next year that there are 5 approved diagnostics only. So we know 3 of them. There are 2 more that are unknown, and companies had to submit for it. We don't yet know if Ames Web is going to be on that list, and if it's not, we cannot use it anymore. So that will make us pivot real quickly, and it won't be ideal, but we'll see what happens. I'm optimistic that it will be on there.
They submitted for it though, right?
They did,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then as far as we talked about switching from handwriting to typing. Are third graders, is there an issue with motor skills, expecting them to type at that age?
I don't think so. In the standards, the expectation is that they're typing by third grade.
Do we, and you made mention that we need to work on that. I mean, it sounds like we need to start sooner.
We do. And that's something with second grade that, I'm definitely conveying that message to our teachers as well.
Okay.
Okay, the last few slides here, just an overview, kind of talking through what is it that we are doing. We have so many things, supports in place. I feel like we're absolutely on the right track. There are areas in which we need intentional focus, and that's what these plans are going to do. So first one here, the systemic and systematic ELA curriculum. You know that the CKLA plan has been in effect for, the last 2 years. It's been very intentional. It's been incredibly an area of focus for all of our staff. I feel like it's going really well. We could have all the materials. If we don't implement them well and have high expectations, it's not going to be successful. And we've seen that in other districts. So we wanted to ensure that is not what's happening. So we have a very targeted focus on CKLA implementation, utilizing those resources, ensuring the principals are involved in the plans. They're doing classroom walkthroughs. We're talking about it all the time with teachers. Our professional development is still building on it. The comfort level, at first year, it's getting better. I think they need to get through this first year initially, and then it's going to be so much easier. But I could not be more proud of how they're embracing it, how the students are absolutely loving it, and everything our teachers are doing to make this successful. So between that, the science of reading principles, we have had that in place for multiple years. I don't want to lose sight of that because they're embedded in CKLA, but it's also the pedagogy of our teachers. They're continuing to ensure that we're hitting the upper end and the lower end of the rope so that we're not losing any skills. We're not just focused on phonics per se and not, some of the higher order comprehension. Comprehension is the end product, but some of the, the vocabulary and orthography, they're doing all that. And what's nice is it's built into the program, so it's similar across all classrooms in each grade level, which is something that we lacked in years prior. As far as supports district-wide, we are blessed to have a lot of supports, and we really couldn't do everything we do without them. So by that, I mean our coaches. We have 2 literacy coaches at the elementary. We have a math coach who's secondary, but she has expanded her work to be also 4th and 5th grade so that she can help that transition as they move into the middle school, and that's been valuable. We have our integration specialist who has worked a lot with DLT and deeper learning and embracing with our teachers. How do we make the real world connection? How do we make this applicable to students so it's not just rote skills, but they're actually able to think through this and build those skill sets on their own that are going to make them into model Mustangs. We have our gifted coordinator. We think sometimes gifted works with gifted, but Lauren in this role has worked with, I will say, everybody pre-K through 12. She is very helpful at enriching, which is something that we do need to continue to focus on, that upper end. And then also project-based learning. She's implemented that in some of the classrooms. She works really well with Jessica, with Makerspace, helping in any way, shape, or form. She's working with the math team at Chapman, and I could go on and on, but she's been a huge asset in this role. Making sure that we're using data, so we're looking at value-added data. One thing that I want to commend our principals on is they are sitting down with their staff members in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and they are showing the staff members their value-added data, which is not always an easy conversation, and it hasn't happened in the past, but they're doing it now. And I think that's part of, we need to know where we need to grow and where we're also being successful. So, specifically Chapman and Sarar have done that, as well as other buildings. But those have gone well, those conversations. And it's, here's where we are, here's where we're struggling, here's the, the quintile or however we have it broken down. As far as students, where we need to ensure that we are hitting the lower end of the students, we are supporting them and adding scaffolds, or we're not necessarily growing the upper end of the students as much as we should. So what can we add into to ensure that we are helping them to reach the ceiling and not just staying kind of, where they come to us? Deeper learning principles I talked through, but that's a huge piece as well. It's not just a sit and get. CKLA is great in that there's a ton of knowledge, but we want to make it applicable and meaningful for our students. And lastly, targeted interventions. This is using actual, the RIMP data, the students who are on RIMPs, targeting what do they need. So we don't just use AIMSweb, that's kind of the starting point. We then give them additional assessments that dig into, what specifically are they struggling with? And it can get down to, closed syllables. It could be that specific. They target that skill, they look for the growth. Once that's met, then they move on to the next skill. So as Jenny said, using our literacy specialists and our title teachers, as well as our classroom teachers, they know exactly what each student needs. They progress monitor on a regular basis. They look at the rate of improvement, and they see, is what we're doing working? And if not, what do we need to do differently? I also want to commend Lindsay Arndt, who oversees the MTSS process at the elementary and now the middle school as well. She's one that really started these data team meetings at the buildings, and they're outstanding to watch. Having the team of teachers talking about students, how can we help support them, what does that look like, how often will we progress monitor? It's really taken off, and the buildings now own that process. And that brings us to the final slide here, which is the placemat you have in front of you. Again, just somewhat summarizes everything we talked through and shows, what targeted pathways we are going to continue to take. It's a process. I can't say that we are just going to implement everything and we'll see all of these gains immediately. I think we've been doing these things over the last few years, but every year we get better, and every year we learn more. We have, much stronger curriculum now as far as English language arts. So I anticipate some of that showing up in our test scores. So questions that I can answer about, either the buildings or our pathway to, this 5 stars, the early literacy measure, how we're getting to eventually be a 5-star in that measure.
I want to thank you for putting this together. It looks comprehensive. It really kind of addresses, here's where we wanted to go, here's where the board set kind of where we want to be, and you've really worked backwards of how we're going to get there. And I appreciate that, and I love how it looks very data forward in our approach to doing it, which feels like a smart, defensible thing to do. As you look at this, is there anything that stands out to you that has the most risk? That you're kind of like, I just don't have enough levers here, or I don't have enough comfort. If we were going to zero in on something and try to bolster your support someplace, is there anything that sticks out?
I would say the most challenging target to reach is going to be that 700 as far as 3rd grade proficiency. Again, not because we aren't doing the right things, but you have kids that come in at a very low skill level, and there are no opt-outs, so to speak, for our students who are English learners or maybe on an IEP or just at-risk students. They have the same expectation of, you need to hit the 700 or else you don't count in our data. I like to see growth. I think we all like to see growth, but that's not how the state measures this one component. So that's an area in which, I don't love that, but we're going to continue to work through it. And, if we see gains, I'm going to be happy with that. I also would like to continue to build toward, the proficiency level.
So if you look at those kids that third graders that aren't meeting the 700, can you map them all the way back to kindergarten and just say, listen, you came in at such a disadvantage that to get you there is just a huge lift?
We can.
So one of the things that I think is important is Andy Trujillo works with like a lot of our data systems, and so last year we had a couple, but we've gone with a product called Abre, and so Abre, you build these dashboards, and basically Abre takes all the data you have in the district about students and puts it into one platform, and then you just got to tell it what to look for. So one of the things that we've built at the secondary and the elementary level is early warning systems. So you put in the inputs of, here are the metrics we want to look at for early warning systems to flag students that are going down this path, right? And so we can start to intervene, whether it's behavior, attendance, test scores, academics, things of that nature. And that way, in addition to Ames Web data, principals are having meetings and looking at this information to say, okay, Abre, pull up all the kids at Muraski Elementary School by the building, by the grade level, by the teacher that are flagged, are getting a flag from our early warning system. Then we know those kids, and then now we can target where the interventions are. So that's another tool that we add on to help us out in addition to all the literacy data that we have.
Yeah, that sounds targeted and prescriptive.
Yeah.
How does that monitoring even happen? It's just,
Every night there's data pulls through the system. So it's a nightly refresh, and then principals at the building level and their teams look at that at corresponding time periods to go through this. So Jenny and Aaron both mentioned, Lindsay and the data meetings that they have on a frequent basis. So those are times where they pull those things up. Lindsay, I think, was involved in building the early warning system. And then, principals, they have access to that 24/7. So they can do different searches that they want outside of that dashboard. But it's something, one of the challenges we've had different systems. This is like our third system like this. But this is one that's sticking with our principals. It's user-friendly. The data uploads are instantaneous. And so now they're getting the reps where they're using it without us reminding or asking, which is what we want.
right.
And then now the nice thing is the way the product works, you can now you continue to build dashboards with whatever you want. So principals can say, hey, I would like to have a dashboard that's created that does this for me. And then the company will have their software developers, build the dashboard for us. And that's kind of the payment structure is by dashboard.
Aaron, you mentioned you created your own monitoring tool for that mid-year test. Did that replace a test, or is that another test?
It's another test.
Can we think about it replacing it? I mean, we have too many tests.
Right, that was my apprehension initially in asking third grade teachers to put this test into place. I was surprised at how readily they wanted to do this because I think it gives them great data. I'm with you, I don't want to over-test kids. I feel like this is a really good practice test for what our students are going to see. And it's 3 times a year, the fall, the spring, and then we give this one in the intermediate. I will get feedback from them because, again, this is the first time doing it. See how the kids felt. Was it over-testing? I don't know that there's something we can necessarily cut out, but we can.
Is it too simple that it's a test and the teacher has to do tests and is going to grade on the tests? So I'm going to move this coconut out and I'm going to move this coconut in, and that's going to be the test. Because my follow-up question is do we do more of it so that you get another test or another marker in the middle?
So I don't want to necessarily swap one out from, we'll say, the CKLA assessments because they're very targeted to the knowledge and skills from that unit. There are some mid-year assessments that CKLA does have that we are replacing this with. There are also shorter pieces that are called checkpoints. So you can target a specific standard. You can say, I just want to give this short checkpoint on, standard RL 3.4, for example. Put that out to the kids. They'll do that. It's 1 or 2 questions, and then you can get a data point on where they are with that standard. We haven't done that yet. This was really our introduction to using this platform. I know this morning, I think they said, Jenny, like, can we give another one? In our peer assessment, they have mock tests. Can we give that? And I think what you said, or Steve, somebody said, not yet. Like, we don't want to over-test them. We love that you want the data, but we also want it to be, data that's reflective of students' best efforts. And if we continue to test, they may get some test fatigue. So we'll keep it in mind, if there is something that we can swap out, so to speak, when I check back in with the teachers.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is they're looking at the data and they want to do something about the data, and it's very targeted. I think the idea behind the peer assessment was what we talked about, the typing piece of it. Can we give something else just to test that part and really make it like a scenario that it is like the state test to give them that practice prior? So maybe closer, we do something like that, but yeah, I mean, that's always something to be aware of, is how much are they testing versus learning versus, and what is that fatigue, so.
Thank you.
Aaron, have you considered, in terms of this midpoint test, differentiation? So, for example, your percentage of kids that have already passed this don't necessarily need that test. And, have we considered that could actually have an adverse effect rather than a positive one? And are, do they take, let's say, a sample fourth grade test? Or do they do something else in place of it that may help them rather than keep giving them the same test that they already passed?
I have not considered that. I want to look at the data and see, with the ones that scored high in the fall, where did they actually land in the winter? I understand what you're saying. I also think there's room for growth as well. Can we still grow these kids? I don't know if it's through a test, but it would be nice to see, they were at a 700, now they're at a 723. That's growth. No, but I will keep that in mind.
So this is our first year, I guess. When we get the results in the spring, we'll know how predictive this winter test really was.
Correct.
Is the winter test typing?
It is. So
Okay.
it's essentially just like the one that take in the fall and the spring.
Yeah. When you were sharing this with us before, I'm trying to triangulate kind of what's a technology gap versus what's a literacy gap. It's wild to me to think that typing is now a literacy skill, like at the third grade level. It just it seems young, but I mean, okay. I guess they're using phones and keyboards. So.
And in 10 years, it'll be a voice recognition gap,
Yeah, right?
right?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks for all the prep you did and all the
Absolutely.
back prep getting us ready.
And we will keep you up to date when we get some data.
Aaron, you want to stay and do your agenda, or you want me to do it for you?
Go ahead.
Okay. We have a couple more items, excuse me, under the curriculum report. We do have a revision to the December 11th agenda under item 4, overnight trip to high school dance. Due to inclement weather, the Strongsville High School dance team traveled to Vandalia, Ohio to participate in the OASAA Dance State Championship this past weekend instead of January 24th to 26th. Everything else remained the same. Under number 3, we do have an overnight trip for DECA to go to Columbus to participate in their state competition, February 24th to 25th. Transportation is paid for the school bus by the district, and then students who qualify at the state conference will be eligible for the national conference, which is in Atlanta, April 25th through the 29th. Transportation for that will be through commercial airlines paid by the students in fundraising. Expenses associated with both trips, including lodging and meals, will be paid by the participating students' fundraising and career tech funds. And then finally, under number 4, we're looking for permission for the Strongsville cheer competition team to travel to Sunbury, Ohio to participate in the OASSA State Cheer Championship the 21st through the 22nd of February. Transportation is by school bus, and lodging and meals will be paid by fundraisers in the Cheer Booster Fund. Any questions on curriculum? We have a number of memorandum of understanding for your consideration. The first one is between the Board of Education and the Strongsville Education Association. This one focuses on our pay rates and duties of our district substitutes. Again, this has been an MOU we've had in place for a number of years since COVID. There was a sunset clause to it, which means at a certain time it automatically is over. And so it is ended, and we're re-upping it moving forward. Under number 2 is another memorandum of understanding between the Board of Education and OPSI. This one is for ESY. As we finalized the OPSI contract this past fall, this one was missed in our review, and this qualifies that OPSI members that are doing ESY, which is extended school year work, supporting students with disabilities in our summer programming, will be paid their regular rate of pay when they're doing their same jobs in ESY. Moving on to number 3, another memorandum of understanding between the Board of Education and OPSI. And this one is how we, incentives and stipends for new bus drivers. Again, this is one that we've had in the past. We've adjusted the rates and the timelines and the payback periods. But again, trying to continue to address the driver shortage that we all face. And so this is one that we are requesting your consideration on. And then finally, another MOU between the board and OPSI, and this one is addressing, we have a number of retirees upcoming and recent in our bus driving fleet, and this is acknowledging their experience and expertise that they will not have to have the substitute rate when they're driving AM and PM routes, but they will be paid at step 5, step E, for driving AM, PM routes. Everything else, whether they do field trips or middays, will be at the substitute rate. Questions on those memorandums of understanding? And just thank you to Jenny and our association presidents for their work and collaboration on getting those done. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the adoption of consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of consent calendar at this point of the agenda means that all items appearing in this agenda denoted as type action consent are adopted by one single motion unless a member of the board or the superintendent requests that such items be removed from the consent calendar and voted upon separately. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Hafner, second by Mr. Wall. George, can you take the roll?
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Do we have time for discussion before we vote?
Sure.
We had a change to allow the dance team to go to Columbus, February 7th through 9th, and I think it would be remiss for us to approve such a thing unless we have an update on how they did. George?
So I was there as a dance dad. So it was in Dayton. And they had 4 dances. Just going off memory, I think it was large lyrical. They got 3rd place. Medium palm, they got 3rd place. Small jazz, they got 2nd place, which could be argued that they should have won. But and then the large hip hop, they got 1st place state champs in that category. So it's their 2nd state championship.
Congratulations.
So I was excited. It was an all-day event yesterday.
That's awesome. Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah. It was fun to be part of it and to go down and watch all the other schools represent. I think Northeast Ohio had a good representation where Avon and Avon Lake also came back with some hardware as well.
Great. Great.
Thank you. I now feel better about voting to approve.
Thanks, Rich. George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Hafner?
Yes.
Mr. Wall?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Thank you. Board of Education, other. You could have waited till other, but it's okay. Does anyone else have any others? All right. Hearing none, we do have need to go into executive session.
To prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, and to consider matters required to be kept confidential by federal law or regulations or state statutes.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Hafner, second by Mr. Wall. George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Hafner?
Yes.
Mr. Wall?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Motion approved. We will enter into executive session at approximately 7:45. We do not anticipate any additional public business following executive session, so I'd like to wish everyone a good night.